Welcome to Truth and Transcendence. You can find all the other episodes on truthandtranscendence.com. So as I was preparing to come in today and sit down and I'm actually going to make quite a few video clips today, I noticed myself starting to slip into that mode that goes, oh God, how am I going to get through doing lots of different video clips without getting bored with my own voice and with my own self and losing inspiration? And I suddenly flashed back to a memory. This is my earliest memory of this particular insight I'm going to talk to you about today. I was 17 years old and I was working as a cashier in Henley-on-Thames in the UK in a little small supermarket that I don't know what it was called and it no longer exists. I was a cashier. So what that meant was you're sitting on a chair in a sort of little contained area near the front of the store. People come up, they put all their stuff down that they want to buy. You run it through, you tell them how much it all comes to. They put it all in a bag, they pay and they leave. So it'd be very easy in a job like that to think this is boring and repetitive and just a grind and exhausting. But somehow or other, even though I was only 17, I clicked on to the fact that if I greeted absolutely each and every person as they came to me fresh, almost as if they were the first person I'd seen that day, and actually looked at them and actually made eye contact with them and greeted them and shared just that eye contact for the moment, not even necessarily conversation, my day was a lot more fun and my energy was much better at the end of the day. So in a way, at the time, I just did that as a way of surviving what could otherwise have been a really horrible experience. And other people around me were, they'd complain at the end of their shift, how boring the job was. But somehow or other, I clicked onto this and it really made a difference. And the next time I noticed this was when I did a waitressing job. Same thing. You're on your feet for that kind of job. So people come in, you guide them to a table or they choose their own table. You come up, you take their order, you wait for them to decide what they want, you write it down, you go and put the order in at the back, and then you bring the food out and give it to them. And then later on you give them the bill and they pay and off they go. So you're on the go, especially if it's a fairly popular place, and this was also still in Henley-on-Thames. And I found the same thing there. If I treated each and every person or group that came in as a new and interesting person or group, the whole session was so much more fun and less painful, and actually less painful on my feet. So I don't know what that's about. There was something about being present in the moment. So, and then the next time I had this experience, I was on the phones doing telephone marketing. And at the time, the organization I was with was possibly the first business-to-business telephone marketing business in the UK. Up till then, the telephone had been used for cold calling people in their homes. And it had a very bad reputation for that reason, understandably. But we were doing business to business, so we had to sit there and make phone call after phone call after phone call. And some of the phone calls would lead to setting an appointment for a rep, but most of them wouldn't. You were doing well if you got 1 in 5 booked an appointment. You were doing very, very well, actually, 1 in 5. Or 1 in 10 was probably more average. So there's 4 in 5 that are saying no, or that won't even talk to you, or that just put the phone down. So again, that could have been a really drudgy, painful, exhausting experience. But fortunately, the culture that we had in that organization was that you start each call absolutely fresh. Somehow you shake off the previous call, step into the new one, as if it's the first person you've ever spoken to in your life. And this morning I was reminded of this afternoon, I was reminded of these memories when I was thinking about coming in and sitting down and making these different videos, and remembering that if I sit down and come into my own presence and come into the present moment before I start talking and recording, I've got a chance of actually enjoying the experience, and I've got a chance of contributing something that might be of interest to other people. So the whole message in this obviously is, in our lives, there are all sorts of circumstances where our default may be to normalize it, commoditize it, turn it into just a repetitive thing that is therefore boring. And it's amazing. The mind can do that with anything. The mind can do that with absolutely anything. It can do it with making love with the person you love most in the world. Isn't that mad? How many people who've been married for many, many years will actually acknowledge that there have been times in that marriage where one or other of them just got a bit bored with the idea of making love with that person, and that's the person they love most in the world. Now, it's not because people have become less interesting. It's not usually because someone's gained a lot of weight or whatever. It's not usually because of that. It's because the mind has this capacity to render things boring, to decide things are boring. And it's actually a survival mechanism because it takes less energy. If we just make everything bland and boring, we just cruise through life. And to the rational mind, that seems like a sensible thing to do. But to the heart and the spirit, it's absolutely deadening. So if in your life you have any aspect in your life whatsoever that's starting to feel flat and boring, maybe experiment with stepping into it, into each moment or each conversation or each encounter or each board meeting or each presentation or each phone call or whatever it is, step into each one as if it's the very first one you've ever done. Because guess what? Actually, it is the very first one you've ever done in that moment. And you are new in that moment because you are constantly changing. And the world is constantly changing. And the people in your life are constantly changing. So actually, stepping into it as if it's the first time is actually more true than not. So I wish you a fantastic week. I look forward to seeing you next time and have many, many fresh new moments.